Have you considered getting involved in property renovations? Well, today's show's just for you. Making a tidy profit renovating a property seems like an attractive proposition, doesn't it? And that's why more real estate investors are turning to renovations. Buy low, renovate cheaply, add substantial value. That's the aim of their game. It sounds simple enough, right? Well, it's not really as simple as that. Sure, anyone can renovate, but that doesn't mean they can renovate for a profit. But if you've been reading my blogs, you've been listening to this podcast, you know that my preferred investment strategy is to add value. It is to manufacture growth through renovations and development. So in today's show, I chat with Greg Hankinson, Director of Metropole Constructions, and Greg has completed thousands of renovations. Not one or two, not hundreds, over his 25 years as a builder. So we're going to give you some tips and in particular share some traps to avoid if you're planning to get involved in property renovations. And of course, at the end of the show, I'm going to be sharing with you my regular but very popular mindset moment. But I want to get one thing clear from the start. Many people think they're going to be able to renovate for profit and make a living out of it. They think they can buy, renovate and sell. But most property flips flop. And I'm not an advocate of this technique. Now, I know there were seminars when they were able to run seminars. There are classes, there are online courses that say sell, make a profit. But having been involved in renovations personally for almost 40 years, I've learned that unless you do major renovations, structural renovations, not a normal renovation, or you undertake a property development, you just won't make a big enough profit to sell on completion. And undertaking that sort of task is definitely not for beginners. Instead, I prefer my BRRR strategy: buy, renovate, rent out, refinance and repeat. You see, it's just too hard to make a profit flipping properties, even if you've renovated them. And there's so much to lose along the way: paying stamp duty to buy, potential capital gains tax, interest costs, holding costs, selling costs. So if you intend to renovate to hold on to your property in the long term, then you stand to gain substantial benefits. See, renovating does a number of things. First of all, it can lower your vacancies. I mean, a newly refurbished property is going to be much more attractive to a wider potential range of tenants, and they're generally prepared to pay a premium for better quality housing. The second benefit of getting involved in renovations is you get a higher rental return. The higher rent you receive on your newly improved asset shines against its competitors. You're going to be able to get some depreciation benefits. Second-hand properties attract fewer depreciation claims now since the federal budget changed it in, I think it was 2017. But once you renovate, you can get some tax benefits for certain items, giving you extra depreciation allowances. And of course, there's the manufactured capital growth. Using this strategy, you essentially build your asset base, create manufactured capital growth, and increase your overall wealth. So, with that introduction, let's get on with today's show and have a chat with Greg Hankinson about how to get involved in renovations.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
With our property markets moving on strongly in this new year, lots of people are interested in doing even better with their property investments by getting involved in renovations. Are you thinking about getting involved in renovations? If that's the case, then my chat with Greg Hankinson today is going to be just for you. Now, Greg Hankinson is a licensed builder. He's been my business partner for well over a decade, the director of Metropole Constructions, and he's done hundreds and hundreds of renovations, so he knows what works, what doesn't work. So why not learn from the best? Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to join you again.
Well, we speak so often day to day, but we don't often sit at the other end of the microphone to have a chat. Now, a lot of people are interested in renovation, and I think I'd like to put some context to it, rather than getting involved in property renovations for making a quick profit or for a flip. My renovation strategy, our renovation strategy, is really what I call a BRRR strategy: buy, renovate, rent, refinance and repeat. Now, lots of people talk about renovation at certain times when they watch The Block or other TV shows where it looks so easy to do. But Greg, what I want to do is pick your brain, having done so many renovation jobs and construction. I mean, renovation is only part of your business, to see what we can learn from that, so people listening today aren't going to make the same sort of mistakes. So let's go back a step. How long have you been a builder, and how many renovations have you done?
I was registered as a building practitioner in Victoria in 1996. 24 years, coming on 25 years now.
Yeah. And how many renos do you think you would have done?
Oh, in that time, hundreds, possibly even over 1,000.
Well, I know we do it for investors in particular through Metropole, but also for people for their own home. But they're two totally different things, aren't they?
They really are. They're using very similar trades. They're a completely different animal.
Okay, so let's first of all wipe out that concept about doing a property flip. The challenge with buying a property, renovating it, and passing it on means you've actually got to create significant capital growth, enough upside to cover the costs, to cover the purchase costs, the selling costs, the tax that you're paying. And Greg, you usually don't have as big a margin on just a renovation. You really need to do structural work to get such a big uplift in value.
You're 100% right, but even more than that, you've got to time the market. You've got to get absolutely everything right. Otherwise, you could sell the property and actually not make anything at all.
Well, getting involved in a structural renovation, like adding another bedroom or bathroom or things like that, it's not as simple. You've got to go through council, you require permits, there's lots of other costs.
There is, and you've got to take these costs into account when you're setting your budget. So you've got to allow for a contingency amount. You've got to allow a buffer for the unforeseen things. And then with the structural renovations, you also need to allow for permits and fees, all of the approval processes, council requirements and guidelines that you've got to fill. All of these things cost time, and they also cost money.
Now, the other thing is that a lot of people go into renovations with an unrealistic expectation. So I know there are workshops and there are blogs that tell you, spend $1 and you'll get $2 back for every dollar you spend. It's not as simple as that. We haven't managed to make that work.
Well, funny you say that. It used to work years ago, but it hasn't worked for a long, long time. There's just not those sort of returns in adding value to property and flipping them.
Sure. So if you're going to get involved in renovation, a lot of people are doing it because they like the excitement. They want to do it. You've got to understand what tasks you should do yourself, if you're going to do any, and which you should outsource.
It's really been glamorized by shows like The Block and these home renovation shows. And if it was easy, everybody would do it and everybody would make money from it. But the reality is it's just not easy.
Well, I guess you're right. Anyone can renovate, but that doesn't mean you can actually do it at a profit. So let's have a look at some tips to make your renovation more profitable. I think the first one is, and you said it a while ago, getting it at the right time of the cycle, but more importantly, choosing the right location. One mistake people make is buying a cheap property, a cheaper location, because that's in their budget.
100% right. So the location is absolutely critical, and you've got to work backwards. You've got to find out what's the end value of the property once it's renovated and completed, and work backwards. And if it's still feasible to do so, then it's the right property.
Now, that's a good point, because as you work backwards, if you want to see how much value you can add, it's a little bit related to the location as well, because and again, it's not a judge of people or locations, but in the lower socioeconomic areas, there isn't as much upside. If you put the best sound system into a Kia or a Hyundai, you can only get a little bit extra for it. But if you buy that Ferrari or the Jaguar and you put a Bose sound system in, somehow or other you manage to get a lot more value for it.
One of the problems, Michael, is people get emotionally attached to properties. They like how it makes them feel. They like the idea of renovating, and that sometimes sways their judgment, and they ultimately make the wrong decision and the wrong purchase.
Sure. Well, okay. So first of all, you've got to get the right location, and then I guess you've got to get the right property. And there are two levels of work, there's the cosmetic renovation and there's the structural. Maybe you could actually explain the difference between the two. We hinted at that a moment ago. And then what sort of properties would be appropriate for those two different sorts of job?
So a cosmetic renovation, in my mind, must be about 20 years old or more. And you must be
The
able
property.
to, the property, you must be able to add significant value to the property as well. A lick of paint is just not enough. So
So a cosmetic renovation then isn't where you do structural work and get permits. It's to make it look nicer, but you've got to actually make it considerably better. If it isn't 20 years old, the kitchen's still going to be in good nick and it's not worth throwing out. The bathroom will probably still be reasonably modern, so there's not as much upside.
yeah, you're 100% right. So a structural renovation should really be something a little bit older than what a cosmetic renovation. Be 50 years plus, have an original kitchen and bathroom. And the critical point is the structure of the home, the bones of the home must be in sound condition.
The reason for that, of course, is because if you had to fix that, whether it's the underpinning, whether it's rising damp, whether it's wood that's rotten, people can't see that. So they don't see the value, the money you put into the job, Greg.
And they're huge dollars to get the foundations right, to re-level a home. You're talking about big dollars. So if the budget's not there for it, it's not going to come back in a return.
Okay, well, how do you decide if you're actually going to refurbish a property or actually renovate it? And in your mind, what's the difference?
The difference between a refurbishment is what we spoke about earlier. It's non-structural. So a refurbishment, in my mind, is things like a new coat of paint, new blinds, new light fittings, door furniture. The little things make a big difference. You wouldn't refurbish a home or repaint a home and not replace the door furniture. Have the 20, 30-year-old door furniture. It just doesn't make any sense. In fact, it actually devalues the work that you do, the repainting work. And it's the same with the blinds and light fittings.
So therefore, that's the sort of thing that I do, and I know you do for your investment properties on a regular basis, sometimes every 5 years, sometimes every 10 years. And I know that's what our company, Metropole Constructions, does for a lot of the property investors whose properties Metropole looks after. When a tenant moves out, sometimes you'll spruce it up a bit. You'll do the refurbishment, and it doesn't really give you extra capital growth, but it gives extra rental appeal. It makes it quicker to rent. And sometimes, depending upon what you do, you either get some depreciation benefits or you can, if it's a refurbishment, often write it off straight away.
In our experience, doing a property refurbishment doesn't necessarily bring a return. It's all, like you said, getting a better tenant, lower vacancy rates, getting a better quality tenant, much more attractive property. Something that the tenant's more likely to look after and maintain as well.
Right. And so how do you decide whether you're going to refurbish or renovate?
Well, it really comes down to bang for bucks and return on your investment. And the truth is sometimes properties just need to be renovated. They're old and tired. The bathroom's at the end of its life. The kitchen cabinetry is at the end of its life. And it's almost unlettable, and you need to replace it. But sometimes there's still some life left in the kitchens and bathrooms, and they're the big ticket items, really. If there's some life left in them, you may get another 2 or 3 years out of your investment property. That's when a refurbishment might come into play.
Now, I know last year, during the difficult times of letting properties with COVID, our team at Metropole Constructions did a lot of refurbishments and quite a few renovations. And those properties, when they were put back onto the market, actually got leased very quickly. And the owners didn't have the heartache of having such long vacancies. And as we're into a new year, we're still having trouble, especially in the Melbourne and Sydney property markets, with prolonged vacancies. So I think it's a good idea to, if your property becomes vacant, I wouldn't kick a tenant out to do this, of course, to consider should you get involved in a refurbishment or renovation. But one of the mistakes some renovators, some do-it-yourself renovators make is they don't understand what they need permission for, what they need permits for, and what they don't. What would be your advice to them?
Generally, when it comes to structural renovations, you need permits and either council approvals or owners corporation approvals. And these things take time and they take money. They generally require a level of comprehensive design, so an appointment of an architect or draft person, as well as a building surveyor, structural, possibly civil engineering. All of these things take time and money.
Now, sometimes you don't realise that you do need owners corporation approval. So a lot of people who own an apartment think, I'm just going to renovate it, and they put a skip in the common area and then they get into trouble. Or even just putting an air conditioner on your balcony. You would assume you'd be allowed to do that. You've got to put the air conditioning unit somewhere. But if it's visible, sometimes we get into trouble for that.
Well, you do. And that's one of those unspoken about rules, that if you put in air conditioning or anything on the fabric of a common building, you would definitely need owners corporation approval. And while you might not need owners approval or owners corporation approval to do cosmetic works, it's a nice thing to do, and it can potentially save you from a lot of headaches down the track when you're doing those works.
Okay, as we're going through the things that somebody who's going to be renovating their property, I guess in general, talking about investment properties, need to do, one of the mistakes we've seen people make over the years, Greg, is overcapitalising. It's very easy to find a property that needs a renovation, but it's not as easy to find one where you're going to reap a profit at the end.
That's true, Michael. And one of what I like to do, and what we do in our day-to-day business, is like we said earlier, we work backwards. So we establish a post-renovation market appraisal on the property. So what's the property going to be worth once we've done the renovation? Then we can subtract the purchase price, any associated purchase costs, interest, a healthy buffer to allow for some variables, and we also then allow a profit. And what's left then is your renovation budget.
Is there an upper limit to the budget? Is there any sort of rule of thumb that you put for the value of a property?
A general rule of thumb for cosmetic renovation works is around 10% of the value of the property. There's no hard and fast rules though, Michael. So just because we say there's a cap at around 10%, sometimes you're going to spend more than that because the property requires it and you can get a return on that. If there's no return, there's no value in doing so. The flip side of that is, of course, that sometimes you don't even need to spend 10%.
Sure. But if you treat your property investments as a business, and that's what we always advocate, this is your stock, this is your shop front, this is the way you're going to be getting your income in. So you've got to keep looking after it. But we talked a bit about a moment ago, allowing a healthy buffer was your words. I've found that a lot of people don't allow a sufficient contingency amount, probably because they don't even know what the real costs are.
Yeah, I think that's right. And a contingency amount should be set in line with your experience level. So if you're an experienced renovator that's done lots and lots of renovation work or construction work, maybe you could trim down that contingency amount. But if you're a first-time renovator, second-time renovator, you probably want a much larger contingency rate to cover the things that maybe you've forgotten to allow for, the unforeseeable things that always crop up with renovation work. I mean, renovation work it's dirty work. You don't always get to see exactly where all the costs are going to come in. So that's where the contingency amount is critical.
Of course, you allow more if there's structural works because there are more unknowns. You probably get away with a bit less if it's cosmetic. But I've actually found there's all sorts of things. You said the unknowns. There's the unreliable tradespeople. There's deadlines that just keep moving on. And so your interest costs, your holding costs go out. Or suddenly something you pull out the kitchens and you find things there, planning delays. All these things can mess up your budgets. And what if you're doing something bigger and you find asbestos? That's a big issue nowadays, isn't it?
Well, asbestos isn't just the old fibro shed in the backyard. Asbestos can be under tile underlay in your bathrooms and kitchens. Until you pull those tiles up, you don't always know that it's there. Once it's there, you need to dispose of it within the guidelines. That comes at a cost.
And I guess you've got to assume that any older property has asbestos in it because that's the way they just built them in those days.
Most properties that we renovate that are 20, 30, 40 years old all have asbestos in them.
Now, we talked a minute ago about the block and those TV shows, and we try and keep our clients renovating to their target market rather than to how they want to live or to create a fashion statement.
Yeah, it comes back to emotion, doesn't it? I mean, and that's what the block does very well. And ultimately, the block's a TV show. It's not a renovation show.
So, having said that, you still want to create a wow factor because first impressions do matter, don't they?
They really do. And that's why you do the little things. The little things make a big difference. A cosmetic renovation, the door furniture, the blinds and light fittings, relatively inexpensive. But imagine you walk into a property and it's all been freshly painted, you've got new carpet, and you've got a 30-year-old door handle, that's hanging off. The little things make a big difference. And keep in mind, we're not trying to make the cover of Bell magazine and win design awards and have the latest cutting edge technology and finishes. We want good quality finishes that suit the market, fit within our budget, and will provide a return.
You said it right there. It's actually got to suit the target market. So you've got to understand what the people who are tenants, potential tenants for your property, but similarly owner-occupiers because they're the ones that create the value of the resale market. Not that you're going to sell your property. So it's important to know that. And I guess we stick to neutral colours. We've changed them a bit over the years, but not a lot because those sort of things don't change. So in general, if we're going to do a renovation of an older apartment, for example, we will pull out the kitchens, put new kitchens, new bathrooms, tile split system, air conditioners, change the light fittings, rewiring and replumbing. They're expensive though. Would you head in that direction?
It's worth testing the wiring, testing the plumbing, but unless you have to, we can work with what we've got. Replace the light switches, replace the power points, modernise the look, but if the functionality is still there, there's no value in spending the extra money rewiring and doing that work.
But as we said, that wow factor is important. And if you do those cosmetic things, if you get it right, people tend to think you spent more money than you have. But one of the areas I see them make a mistake, a false economy, is only do just the kitchen or just the bathroom. And genuinely, yesterday I was actually looking at a property online with some friends who were looking at a property in a villa in Brighton that had been done up really nicely. The kitchen was done up nicely. The house had been opened up, open plan, and the bathroom was the original green tiles, and it spoiled it considerably. So the people, I don't know if they'd run out of money, but it's interesting. That's been sitting on the market for a while at a time when the properties have been moving quickly.
It says a lot, doesn't it? It's been sitting there for a long time. And why? Because they chose not to spend, $15,000, $20,000 on the bathroom renovation? In fact, if they had have done the bathroom renovation, they would have had a much broader target market and possibly sold the home for a whole lot more than the cost of the renovation.
Very much so. And again, even if you're not going to sell, the same with tenants. So if your budget doesn't allow for both, maybe it's worth deferring that renovation, Greg.
And that's our recommendation to our clients that we talk to about renovation. Maybe it's not the right time to renovate right now. If you can't do the bathroom, maybe the better strategy is to hold your funds, maybe do a refurbishment, make the property a little more attractive and get a better quality tenant in for the next 2-3 years, and then revisit the renovation.
Now, some people are going to say the next question I'm going to put to you, you've got to have a vested interest because you'd like to get business. You'd like people who are listening to this to use our company. So would I. But what would your advice be to somebody who says, no, okay, I want to do it myself. I'm going to have fun doing it myself.
That's okay. You can have fun doing it yourself. No problem. But what we do with our clients is bring them back to their why. Why are you doing this? What's the purpose? And if the purpose is to run your investment property portfolio like a business, why wouldn't you give it to the experts that can deliver it on time, on budget, to the standard and the target, to achieve a target market and a target return, so that you can stick to your core business while your property portfolio is growing?
Sure, the TV shows glamorise this and they seem to simplify it, but it's not simple. You've got to coordinate a whole lot of tradespeople. And I know that our team get in and out very quickly, sometimes 4 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks, depending upon what's going on, because we've actually got it set up in systems, and we've also got the trades on hand. It's actually very difficult for the one-off renovator to actually get trades to fit in with them, especially at the moment where it just seems too hard to get a lot of these.
Michael, a lot of my trades are companies and people that I've worked with for more than 20 years. We've got long-term relationships. We've got a critical understanding of what my expectations are, ultimately, but also what their expectations are, and we work together to achieve whatever the task is that we're doing. Relationships in building and construction are critical.
I think the other thing is people actually don't value their time. They don't factor into the equation what their cost of their time is and the stress involved in doing this, in wrangling and negotiating with suppliers, making decisions, taking those phone calls, being there to make sure the goods have actually arrived, and then making sure nobody pinches them from the site. Now, if renovating isn't your day job, this could mean hours of work after hours or on weekends, and maybe that time could be better spent with your family or doing your regular job. But again, they're doing this. Sure, some people are skilled and maybe they should be doing it, but for a lot of people, it really is to do with their emotions and the excitement and the fun.
Yeah, I think that's right, Michael. And I could tell you so many stories about clients that have got a property that they'd like renovated, but they didn't want to pay their perceived premium, what they perceive to be a premium, for a builder to manage that project for them. They've gone ahead and done it themselves. And we've spoken subsequent to them finishing their work, and took them twice as long, it cost them just as much, and maybe the property is not as great as what it otherwise could have been.
Sure. So keep your emotions out, and similarly keep your emotions out, as we said, with in the finishes and fittings as well. So one of the thoughts I think that keeps coming through is get a team around you, and that involves a whole lot of tradespeople. And in general, tradespeople are busy. They're unreliable, especially for people who are not using them on a regular basis.
You've got to learn how to speak tradie. Tradies have their own language. So part of long-term relationships with tradespeople is understanding what motivates them, what drives them, and ultimately that's going to come back and pay dividends on your renovation.
Now, one of the things that I know you speak with our clients about when setting a budget, and we put a fair price to them, and sure, we make money out of it as a construction company, but nowhere near as much as people think. There isn't such a big margin in it. You've just got to do a few of them to make the company profitable. But we sort of tell them, don't be stingy. You get one chance to do this every, 20 years or so. Do it right. Don't be cheap.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. Don't be cheap, and stretch yourself a little. It's what we talked about before. If you can't afford to do the bathroom, either put it off or stretch yourself just that little bit to get it 100% right. You get one shot at renovating your property every 20 to 30 years. Why not do it right the first time?
At the moment, though, there's these cheap imports. I don't know if they're going to keep coming from China in the future, but you can get floorboards that are half the price of others. And again, there's big stores whose names I won't mention at the moment where you can get them. But do they have the same sort of lifespan, or is it just short-sighted, Greg?
Oh, look, I mean, thrifty is good, cheap is bad. It's generally things are cheap for a reason. And ultimately, I think in building and construction, you get what you pay for. And if you're looking at $19 floorboards, you're not going to get the life out of those for an investment property where It's maybe not going to be treated the same as you would treat your own floorboards at home. You want something that's going to last the test of time. So you don't want to buy the most expensive products on the market or the latest cutting edge finishes. You need good quality products that are going to last the test of time, not necessarily cheap.
So ask yourself the tough questions. Do I have time to do this renovation myself effectively? If the answer is no, or I think so, consider paying a professional to manage it. Remember, even with the renovations, our renovations come with a guarantee, and so would other builders that actually have to pay for the insurance and provide the guarantee and come back when things haven't actually worked as well as you'd like. So the extra cost of this will often be covered by the insurance of having a builder on your side, Greg.
Yeah, so as a registered builder, and we're not unique, all registered builders must provide warranty insurance over the works that they do. And it's good insurance for the consumer. It covers them against defective or works that are either incomplete or not as they should be.
So again, in summary, our strategy is to buy, renovate, rent out, and you're going to rent it at a good rent now, and you're going to have a wider range of tenants looking for your property. Then in due course, refinance it. You are going to add value if you do a good renovation, but you're not necessarily going to add enough value to instantly get finance again, especially in the current environment. But down the track, you will. You'll have more rent, more equity, and you can repeat it and do it again. And even if you're not looking at adding to your portfolio in due course, keeping your portfolio up to scratch to bring you as much rent as possible, keep tenants as long, minimise the vacancies is a great way to do things. Now, if people want to find out more about Metropole Constructions and what Greg can do for you, if you go to metropole.com.au, there'll be a link in the show notes, and you can actually find out about Metropole Constructions by clicking on the link in the show notes or going to metropole.com.au. You'll have an example of some of the works. And if somebody just wants to have a chat with you, Greg, about should I do a reno, shouldn't I, what's it going to cost, what ballpark, would it be okay for them to give you a call?
Absolutely. My phone's always on. Happy to take the call.
Now, apart from that, though, the other thing that you do, and I shouldn't let you get away without doing it, is that the majority of your work, while you've got others doing the renovation, is actually construction, and you specialise in construction of townhouses in Melbourne, but also people's home. Why would somebody come to you rather than one of the big name builders to build their next home or to do their development project, their investment project?
What we do differently to a lot of builders, Michael, is on the investment side, we look at the development from an investment point of view. So we tailor our construction, our townhouse construction jobs to suit the target market. So similar to the renovations, it's all about maximising returns. What's the best finishes that we can put into this property? How can we build this to get the most value, not only from a rental return, but from the end value of the property? And then we tailor the construction to suit that market. And it's the same for the home buyer, for the home builder. We'll work with our clients to really deliver to the target market.
Well, basically, you said it right at the beginning. You've been doing this for over 25 years, successfully building homes, townhouses since the 1990s. And together, we've been doing this for well over a decade. And I think, as you said, the big difference is we don't think like builders, even though that's what you are, but you're also a property investor. And so we put the investor hat on to make sure it works. So thanks for your time. By the way, as we talked about that, it made me think that we probably should have a chat on this podcast about how to choose a builder, what to look for, because a lot of people are thinking of building their homes or building investments. So I look forward to catching up with you again real soon and we can have that chat.
Thanks, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
In a moment, I'm going to share with you my mindset message, but just to follow on the conversation I had with Greg, as we are entering a new property cycle, I believe you should consider renovations, and for some people, development as part of your investment strategy. But where does it fit in? When do you renovate? Do you buy a property and renovate straight away? Or do you keep it for a couple of years and renovate later? It makes a big difference tax-wise. So what we do when we see a client at Metropole is we put a strategic plan together. Why not have a look at what our services at Metropole involve? Go to metropole.com.au and you'll see we offer a holistic approach to ensure you grow, protect and pass on your wealth. See, we customise a solution to meet your specific needs using our time-tested system, and you'll be able to get benefit whether you're a beginner, getting started in the property journey, an experienced investor, and as you know, we help sophisticated investors manufacture capital growth by becoming property developers. Go to metropole.com.au and find out how we can help you create your wealth through property.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
What is success? Look, if you're like me, you're interested in learning about success. I guess that's part of why you're listening to this podcast. You're interested in reading or hearing about successful people. I know I enjoy reading about the habits, the philosophies, the behaviours, and the influences of those who've already accomplished great things. Not only do I find them motivating, but I think by understanding how and why successful people do what they do, I pick up tools, I get ideas that I can use to improve my own life. But I guess the question is, what is success? As I researched over the years, I came to realise that success has got many different definitions, depending on who you ask. The dictionary definition of success is that the accomplishment of one's goals, the desired results of an attempt, or that one succeeds. Now, I know many people think that success is all about money and fame and power. But the many stories of unfulfilled lives and burnout amongst the so-called successful people, the successful sports people, the celebrities, the actors, shows, however, success is not only about achievement, it's definitely not about possessions. In my mind, success in life is much more than just money and power. It's defined by your actions. It's defined by how you live your life. So what's needed to succeed in life? I've come to the conclusion that there are 6 essential aspects to happiness and to having a successful life. The first one is physical health. You need to be physically healthy to have the energy to engage in life. If you don't have your health, you can't function, you can't be successful. Having all the money and being stuck in a hospital bed really doesn't help, does it? The second element of success is mental fitness. You need to be continuously engaging your mind, learning and growing, experiencing new ideas, getting better, pursuing mastery, putting your ideas to work to accomplish your goals. The third of the 6 essential elements of happiness and success is emotional health. You need to be fully aware emotionally. You need to feel good about yourself. You need to have a positive self-image. If you're depressed to the point where you can't function, you can't be successful. So you need physical health, mental health, emotional health, and you also need social health. You need positive relationships with people that you love, people that support you, friends, loved ones, people you can trust. They make you a better person. They inspire you to be better. Humans, we're social. Boy, did we find that out when we couldn't be out socially during those lockdowns in COVID. Humans are social, and if you don't have people you care about and they care about you, you can't really be successful, can you? The 5th element is purpose, meaning, spiritual health. You make a positive impact on other people's lives, giving meaning and purpose to your work and what you do, your daily life. If you've got purpose, meaning, spiritual health, you're successful, aren't you? It's one of the things you need to be successful, because this keeps you focused and inspires you to overcome all the day-to-day struggles that we are inevitably going to have, to the setbacks that are part of everybody's life. And then, yes, there is the 6th part, and that's material wealth. In other words, it's the basic levels of food and shelter and clothing that all of us need, that's paid for through money. If you're too poor to have those basic things, you end up with more stress, struggling financially, and you can't be successful. So success is shown in a number of ways, and you can function and be happy in the short term without all of these elements. But in the long term, if you're missing one, I believe it's unsustainable. you're probably going to become unhappy. So, of course, something will have to change in your life for you to go on to the next level. Emotions are how your subconscious communicates with you. They're one of the reasons humans are so resilient. So if you're unhappy, it's probably your body's way of telling you something is wrong in your life and that you should do something about it. So back to what is success. I've come to the conclusion that success is the drive for long-term sustainable happiness. In the short term, you can find happiness with all sorts of things. How many people like you on Instagram, how much money you've got, going out and partying, small wins, spending time on YouTube, alcohol, shopping, that quick binge you get, the excitement you get with shopping, movies. But in the long term, if you don't have all those 6 essential elements I just mentioned, you're not going to feel happy. You're not going to feel successful. Hey, by the way, don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare your chapter 10 to somebody else's chapter 30. Don't worry about what others say or do. Only you can know if you're truly successful or not, and that's only the case if you're on the path to happiness over the long term. So as we enter into a new year, I want you to concentrate on making your year more successful. One way is by coming along twice a week to listen to this podcast to learn about things. But remember, it's more than just money. It's more than just property. It's more than financial. So look after yourself. Just to reiterate, the 6 essential elements of happiness and success are physical health, mental fitness, emotional health, social health, having a purpose, having a meaning, and of course you need material wealth as well. Well, if you got some benefit from today's show and you understand a little bit more about getting involved in property renovations and you know somebody else who'd benefit from this, please tell them about the show. Just use the share button on the podcast app, just send it to them or tell them about it. By the way, if you're not a regular subscriber, please subscribe to the show as well using your podcast app so you're kept up to date. In between the twice weekly shows, you can catch me on social media. Just look for Michael Yardney. Or if you're on Facebook, why not join the Property Update private Facebook group where you're going to get exclusive information from me. I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?